Welcome back to another episode of Josh Langley Gets to Know. Now, today we're going to be doing something completely different. We are going to talk animals and adventure with Jan Latta. Jan is a children's author, but what she does, she goes out on adventures right around the world, takes photos of animals, endangered species, and then writes stories about them. And then she shows kids, does school visits and stuff like that. But just amazing stories of lions and sloths and all this sort of stuff. But the thing is, her life took a completely 180-degree turn to make her go and do all this adventure stuff. And it's fascinating what she was doing before and then what happened, okay? Let's just say there was a chance encounter with a very, very large animal. So sit back, pour a cup of tea, cup of coffee, glass of wine, whatever, and let's get to know Jan Latta. Jan Latta, welcome to my little talk show. How are you going?
I'm great. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Well, look, thank you very much for being on my show. Now, in the introduction, I spoke a little bit about what you do, about how you write your kids' books. You're an adventurer, wildlife photographer. You travel the world photographing endangered animals. So I spoke a little bit about that. But what's really grabbed my attention is how you started doing that. Now, you used to be in advertising, a creative director of an advertising agency, and then you became face-to-face with a gorilla. Talk to me about how all that happened. What happened there?
Well, after I left advertising, I started a very small boutique, a publishing company with two English guys. And one of our projects was the Regent magazine for all the hotels around the world. I was looking at a wonderful photo essay by an African photographer called Carl Amon. And the images have stayed in my mind. And I just thought, I have to go to Africa.
Wow.
So with the excuse of writing a couple of captions, I got on a plane. I went to Africa. I met Carl and his wife. And while we were sitting in the garden having tea, a cheetah was walking through the garden. And I felt silly saying, "You've got a cheetah in your garden." But of course, it was Carl's pet that he had had since a cub.
So obviously it was a friendly cheetah.
No, the only person that was allowed to touch Mogo was Carl.
Right.
I was allowed to sort of put my hand over Carl's shoulder to just gently touch. But when I had my wonderful encounter with two cheetahs, the contrast between these cheetahs in the wild, allowing me to come up to them, and Moto, who wouldn't allow me at all, was a great contrast.
Yeah, that is really strange, isn't it? Wow,
Yes.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, why did you leave advertising? Because I'm in advertising myself. I want to know why you left advertising.
I left advertising because my husband went to Hong Kong to start Young and Rubicam, a big international advertising agency.
Yep.
And Y&R stole my art director, 3 of the top clients, and I was fired on the spot.
Oh, so it wasn't really a voluntary thing, but...
No. So I looked at my navel for a long time and thought, right, I'm a designer. What can I do? So I started designing annual reports and things like that until I got myself established.
Right. Okay. Now, look, it's pretty courageous to just jump on a plane and go to Africa and start photographing these animals. What made you? What was that inner fire? I know you said you felt compelled to go to Africa, but the courage to do that, where did that come from?
I think after I met Carl Amon and a little mini encounter with a lovely cheetah, I said to Carl I wanted to see the mountain gorillas. So he actually organized for me to go up the mountain to see the mountain gorillas. And that's really when my life was changed, because I just had this incredible emotional moment being face to face with this big silverback. I was
Mm.
told I wasn't allowed to eyeball any of the
Yeah.
gorillas. It was considered threatening.
Mm.
But he was looking at me and I looked back at him, and I just thought it was just this wonderful moment. My guide said there were only 600 mountain gorillas left in the entire world.
Wow.
And as I came down the mountain, I thought, that is so sad. 600 of these incredible, magnificent creatures. So
Mm.
that was when I decided to change my life and my career. I
Wow.
think I might be the only author who could actually say I was inspired by a gorilla
Well,
to
if you're going to
become an
be
author.
inspired by anything, that's a pretty monumentous thing to be inspired by, especially when I suppose it's you're in a completely different country, completely different culture, face to face with only something we only see on TV or in books. Like
Yeah,
I can imagine the actual presence of the gorilla would have been absolute. That would have been awe-inspiring. That's what half was
and
the
they're
transformation.
huge, really huge
Mm.
animals. But I just thought, I was trained as a designer, and I thought creating books for children on endangered animals might have been easy, which of course it wasn't. And when I said to Carla Munn I wanted to do a photographic book, I certainly didn't want to cartoon or get someone to illustrate endangered animals. I wanted the books to be real.
Mm.
So he said to me, very strangely, he said, don't go and learn photography in a studio. He said, you come to Africa and you learn in the wild, because it's a whole different form of photography. You have like 1 second
Yeah.
to take
Uh,
photographs
this
sometimes.
is back in the film days, or this is using digital SLR?
Film, film.
Wow. I know. I used to
This is
work with
25 years ago.
be a photographer as well, and I know that with a roll of only 36 frames, and you had to make sure that you didn't waste any. And that was not
Yeah,
like today. You just take a million shots at once, but to
yes,
be in the wild to get that one shot. So
yeah.
so had you done any training in photography before that?
I was a happy snapper.
Yep.
Being a designer, I like taking photographs, and being an Australian, I roamed around the world taking photographs at some point. But
Mm.
learning in the wild, I made a lot of mistakes. I got myself in a lot of danger.
That's how you
But
learn.
yes, and so that was my learning curve. And then I realized that no big publisher is going to give me a huge sum of money to go to Africa and hopefully get some photographs of an animal in the wild.
Mm.
My leopard book took 15 years to finish.
Wow.
So, yes, 11 trips to Africa, lots of photographs of a leopard walking to the right and walking to the left, but never telling its story properly. So, things like that. I knew then that I had to be my own self publisher.
Mm.
And to make the books affordable, I had to learn to write for children, had to be a successful wildlife photographer to tell the animal story, and learn how to be a self-publisher.
And that's a
So I just
very
felt
steep learning
I didn't
curve.
have a choice. I just had to learn.
Yeah. So how did you find writing for kids? Because obviously being a designer and stuff, I'm assuming you think more visually, especially with the photography, but actually the writing part, how did you find that?
I found it very difficult.
Mm.
But in advertising, we condense everything fairly tightly to the important message,
Yeah.
unique selling proposition,
Yep.
as we used to call it. So that helped me a lot, actually, just with the big photograph of an animal, and to just very simply say the message. Um, I think my advertising background helped in that form.
I would totally agree. I mean, in advertising myself and a copywriter, you have to say you get a big idea, condense it into the few words possible that touches someone emotionally,
Yeah.
and then they go, oh, they've got buy-in. So you were doing that, and yet the skills as an advertising person really paid off for that. But it still doesn't make the writing easy, though, does it?
No,
No.
a lot of research. I think the most difficult book was my sloth book
I
because
love sloths.
I know
That's my totem animal.
Oh, good. Well, this was like 5 years trying to find where I could photograph sloths in the wild. And luckily there was a zoologist, so she checked all my copy. I technically wrote it, my wish list before I went. But there was a very, very funny moment when I was told the facts about a sloth coming down once a week from his tree.
Yep.
Once a week, I slowly climb down from my tree to the ground. I hold onto the tree trunk, and with a funny wiggle poo dance, I go to the toilet.
And that is the most fascinating thing about sloths, isn't
Children
it?
love it.
Oh, give the kids a poo joke and they'll love it any day. You've won them over. So I was going to ask you,
to answer your question properly, I always gave all my copy to a professional children's editor.
Yep.
And they checked the copy to see if I was, my language was with the right age group.
So how do you do that? What program do you use to do the formatting and stuff on your computer? Do you do that, or like the designing? Obviously you would do that because you're a designer.
I do that myself as well. I learned on Quark.
Oh yeah.
And I'm still designing on Quark. I didn't change to InDesign. I think once you get used to something, it's a comfort zone.
Yeah, exactly.
So yes, I learned how to design on the computer, and everything went to Hong Kong because I lived there for 27 years, and I had a great family printer. So color separations came back, and then we did the printing.
Good. So you had a lot of those connections anyway, and it was good to utilize them to make. So how do you then, as a self-published author, how do you then go about your marketing, your distribution? How do you do that?
It was difficult. When I lived in Bronte, I noticed a Dimmock shop, and I very excitedly called and said, "I'm your local author."
Oh, no. We've all been through this before.
After that really bad experience, I thought I would prefer to stand ground to a charging rhino than get my book into a bookshop.
It's a tough gig, isn't it, doing it that way?
Yeah, but in the beginning, Taronga Zoo took my books. I started talking at schools. The really big companies, what were they called? They were all apprentice growers, but they used to be my distributor. Can't think of the name for a minute, but they used to order like big quantities. They were taken over by some accountants, and the whole thing collapsed.
As soon as accountants get involved.
Yep. Then I had
nothing against accountants. If you're an accountant out there, I love you. Thank you.
Yes, mine too. But no, a lot of distributors have hit the dust.
It's a tough
my big
market
market is really when I talk at schools. My biggest market is Hong Kong.
Wow.
And last October, I bit the bullet and I did a week in Hong Kong during the riots.
Oh, you picked a good time, didn't you?
Yes. And from a very, very bad thing that was happening in the weekends and the nights with the riots, a very good thing was happening at homes, because I sold more books that week than I've ever sold.
Wow.
Because children were staying at home and reading.
Yep.
And I thought that was pretty terrific.
Good upside to that. But I suppose you're used to a bit of adventure then, aren't you? You don't mind going to a few hot spots and like you've even been to places like Costa Rica, Sri Lanka, Uganda, and places like that.
Uganda was scary.
What's the scariest scenario you've been in? You've got your camera, you're going out. What's the scariest thing?
The scariest moment was without my camera. It was at night having dinner with the camp manager, being the only person in the camp. And we were having our dinner in the mess tent, which had a big space in the middle.
Yeah.
And a lion, a big male lion, was chasing a wildebeest right through the middle of our tent.
How rude! Interrupting your beautiful meal, and a lion comes chasing through.
That was terrifying. I mean, I really had no idea what to do. So I just stood perfectly still. And the Maasai came running down, and I was very, I was safe when I was with them. Then when my heart started pumping again, I said to the camp manager, how am I going to get back to my tent? And he said, oh, not a problem. The Maasai will walk with you. So I had two big African men. I was trying to be invisible in the middle. And we started walking towards my tent. They were swinging their big torches around, picking up some of the pride of lions. But one lion was just beyond my tent with its eyes showing in the torchlight. I grabbed hold of one of the Africans and said, we can't keep walking. Look, it's too dangerous. They have a lovely sing-songy way of speaking. And he said, it is okay, Jan. You are closer to the tent than the lion is.
That's an interesting logic, yes.
The desire to run was intense, but they got me in safely. And of course, that was a great story to save up to talk to school children, especially if I saw a group of boys that I thought would be naughty. And I started with that adventure story, and I had them for the rest of the hour.
Look, I can imagine that when you talk to the school kids, you would have them glued with all your stories and all your tales of adventure and stuff like that.
Yes, well, in contrast to the lion, because I did have my camera with me this time, I was in Borneo with my guide, and we used to just go into the rainforest, and there was a platform for the orangutans who'd been released, and there was like a banana, big stack of bananas for them to eat. There was this great crashing in the trees, and this big male came thundering down, and all the orangutans disappeared into the greenery.
I'm out of here.
I said to the guy, what's happening? And he said, oh, this is a really aggressive orangutan. So I said to him, well, what'll I do to keep myself safe? And he looked around and he said, well, there's a triangle of trees there. So if anything happens, just stand quietly in the middle of that. Wasn't so sure about that. So I started taking this big male's photograph. He had huge flanges, these big cheek pads, and he was magnificent. But he kept staring at me. And I thought, maybe I shouldn't have my long lens pointing at him. And he was, it was such a great opportunity. So I kept taking his photograph. I was aware of some tourists, that had walked into the same area. And all of a sudden, through the lens, I could actually see his muscles tense up, and he charged. The tourists screamed and ran everywhere.
Did you get photos of them screaming and running away?
I just felt I just had to stand perfectly still, because in my mind there was nowhere to run. 130 kilos of barreling red hair came flying past me. And it took a while to recover. And I look around for my guide, and he's laughing. And I thought, that wasn't funny. Why are you laughing? He said, look behind you. There was a pretty female orangutan behind me. So he was looking at her the whole time.
Oh, it's funny how we always think it's us. I'm the beautiful one, No, it's the red head behind us. Wow. I want to know. I want to know, for a woman to go out and do adventures like that, I think that's pretty courageous. What do you tell young girls who say, oh, I couldn't do what you do? What do you say to them?
I would say if they want to do what I've been doing, to do a lot of homework because you have to know a lot about the animals, where they live and how dangerous it is. And if they're really passionate about it, find a way of doing it.
Mm.
When I went on my first trip, I was really scared. But I started reading all the books of all the women who were brave and all the scientists who researched the animals. And I thought, if they can do it, I can do it. And reading their life stories, I just felt there was a comfort zone in me being able to cope.
Yeah.
And the first thing was getting used to living in a tent alone.
Yeah.
The African night is pitch black at times. You can't see your hand in front of your face. And getting used to all the noises in the night. When you hear this sort of, it's lions. They do this coughing after they've done all their roaring. So you think,
just a bit of clearing of the throat for the old lion.
How close are they?
Because I know for myself when on the odd time I've been camping and stuff, and I live out in the rural property, and if you sit outside at night, even here in Australia, you will hear so many things that you would never hear in the city, and
Yes.
it can feel so alien, and suddenly you feel really uneasy because you don't. What's that noise? What's that noise? Am I going to be threatened? But to do that in Africa and to go, oh, that's just a lion just clearing his throat next to your tent. that's a whole new level of adventure, isn't it?
Yes. Well, one night I was by a river and I could hear lions roaring, and I felt, oh, they're on the other side of the river. So it was really nice listening to them roaring and carrying on. And then I heard lions roaring on my side, and I thought, oh, and they seemed very close. But, I always have someone outside my tent, a Maasai, looking after me. They know the sounds. They know how close wild animals are.
So you've always felt relatively safe wherever you've gone, though, relatively protected.
Yes.
Let's put it that way.
Yes, definitely.
Yep.
No, I think when I do all the research for my books, I often use Google and all those systems, but the guides are the ones who really know.
Yep.
And I ask them a zillion questions because they're seeing these animals every single day. And I learn so much just being with them. And when I was doing my latest book last year, in fact, I should be in Africa right now.
Oh, yeah.
I had to move it until March next year. But I was really, really close to this incredible lion who was just pulling a lot of funny faces at me. I mean, it was extraordinary. We were just about a meter from him. And where is he?
He's not in the room with you, is he?
No.
Just imagine Jan pulls out this giant lion. Oh, there he is.
There he is.
So that was the one. And what a great photo, though.
Yes.
Great
So
photo.
I've got these huge big prints that of all his different expressions. When I talk to school children, we make up silly stories about them. But no, lions, I was told, they get used to the smell of the jeep as a total. And you've just got to be careful not to move around too much to catch their eye. But they walk right up to the jeep and look at you with their yellow eyes and just keep walking. And it's really quite amazing. Wow. It's wonderful.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And look, Dan, I'm gonna wrap up with one last question. I normally ask people what's the most important thing in life to remember, but I'm going to change it slightly for you. I'm going to say, going from advertising to doing this adventure, wildlife photography, kids' books, what is the most important thing that you have learned by doing that?
be brave.
Be brave. Yep. And do you think we all have this brave in us?
Yes, I think so. I think if we really want to do something, we can be brave enough to do it.
Yeah.
And quite recently, I've felt that in this lockdown time, I've been giving away a lot of books, donating a lot of books. If I can't sell them, I just feel it seems right that giving sometimes is more rewarding than receiving.
Yep. I like that.
So it's been an interesting learning curve, this coronavirus.
Oh, I think we've all had an interesting learning curve with it. So, Jan Latta, how can people get in contact with you? What's the best way if they want to book you for a school visit, buy your books? What's the best way to get in contact?
Through my website, and I'm going to try and hold it up.
truetolifebooks.com.au. I'll put it up underneath the screen as well here when I do my editing.
Great, wonderful.
Okay. So truetolifebooks.com.au. Excellent, Jan. It's been fantastic talking to you. We could talk about animals and wildlife adventures all day long, but thank you so much for sharing the story with us.
Thank you so much, Josh, for the interview. It's been wonderful.
Not a problem. Hi, thank you very much for watching the latest episode of Josh Langley Gets to Know. Got any questions, whether you want to say whether you liked it, you didn't like the interview, and like my hair's too grey or something like that, post a comment below. I won't get upset, okay? Now, gratuitous plug here. If you want to grab my books, Being You Is Enough, Okay to Feel the Way You Do, or Magnificent Mistakes, or all three, just go to my website at joshlangley.com.au, because it's about trying to change the world one book at a time, helping one kid just to feel good about who they are and feel good in their own skin. If we can just help one child, then they may help another child, and another one, then another one, and then that's how we slowly change the world. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next episode.